Hello, it's Kid Charlemagne back to discuss, I believe this is the seventh studio album by Joni Mitchell, The Hissing of Summer Lawns. Let's get going. So this title, it's just a poetic way of saying it is hot in California. The lawns, the land, it's hissing with heat, and maybe that's just literal, but maybe it's also about the hissing snakes in the fields and the streets of Los Angeles. People are snakes. They'll stab you in the back, and these businessmen, as we'll see in this album, how she hates the businessmen, and these people in the music business will stab you in the back. They'll turn your back on you. They're snakes. But yeah, maybe we'll find out more with the title track. Let's think about this cover. Here it is right here. You can look it up online. I don't have a physical copy on me. Not my favorite cover by her. It's admirable. Yeah, she's doing her own thing. She's doing her own album art. We respect that. But she's kind of just like doing and like basically aping Henry Rousseau and that painter. So I mean, I don't really mind it, but I think it's cool to see New York in the background. But yeah, I don't know. I prefer some of the other covers better. Just not doing a lot for me, especially when I could go to a museum and look at the paintings of Henry. So, okay, so the first track, in France, they kiss on Main Street. It's like the second album in a row where she starts off the album with the worst song. It's just not. Well, maybe like the second worst song, but the next one's not very good. But I just find this one just really embarrassing in how it kind of really aspires to be some sort of like pop radio hit. With that, there's just that really disgusting, noodly electric guitar that drones in and out of the album. And I mean, it's just awful. And there's a background singer too who's popping in and out. Why we don't? I don't think we need that. If we have a good singer, the hook at the end of the verses is quite good and makes you almost pretend that this is a good song, but I wasn't falling for it. And just more of the lyrics. It's not really much going on besides young lovers living the high life, kissing on the street in France. I do like the end of the first verse. There's some clever rhyming in the song, and I mean back to that like noodling guitar. It only shows up like, I mean, kind of like drones in and out, and it doesn't show up at all the rest of the album. So I don't love it. Anyway, let's go to the next song, which is Jungle Line. Yeah, 0 for 2 on the album so far. There's this weird buzzing and that do. I found it really unbearable. I thought made it hard to pay attention to the words, the lyrics of the album. I'm not quite sure what the it's a moog, yeah, a moog, and there's the warrior drums, which is but yeah, no, it's just not a good song to like listen to, especially with like the last song too. They're not enjoyable to listen to, which is unfortunate because the lyrics, I know I didn't say much about the lyrics from the last song, but the lyrics are like bad, but they can work with better music, which is why Court and Spark is so amazing, because on some of my favorite songs on Court and Spark, the lyrics aren't like anything crazy like some of her best, most poetic songwriting. Like Car on the Hill, I think that's one of the best tracks on that album, but it's just like I'm waiting for my lover to come in the car on the hill. That's all the song is, but it sounds amazing. whereas these two just really sound really grating to listen to. And I mean, on the lyrics with this song, it I guess the most interesting part of the song is kind of that first verse, um, where it's kind of like continues that structure through the rest of the song, um, but like it's kind of the story of the song where you like read the words, um, rather than like listen to the music. Rousseau, he walks on trumpets pass, which kind of just that one line tells you all you need to know. Um, you kind of just imagine Rousseau's brush painting Joni Mitchell's words over the trumpets, which are like the path and the music of the song. And you read the rest of the song, painting the images in your head. So it's like a cool song to listen to or to read the lyrics and kind of imagine. It's cool to imagine, but it's not very fun to listen to. So yeah, it's what it is. But Eden and the Kingpin, okay, much more pleasant song to listen to. But honestly, I'm a little lost on the story in this one. I think it's about like a pimp and his top girl. The Kingpin is the pimp, of course. He's a tiger, a big man from a small town. All his girls have grown old, and now he has his Edith, and they're in the same. They're kind of just one in the same. They're partners in crime. Um, they There's that one line where it's like they stay eye to eye. They're interlocked. If one looks away, they both collapse. Um, it's and it has kind of that. I mean, it's a good track. I like it. Something like this, it's kind of how a song like this, where it's like a story of two characters. It's one of those songs where it kind of makes you wonder about Joni Mitchell herself and her own self-awareness in her writing, her own vulnerability, because in past albums she's quite vulnerable, and we'll get to this in another song later, but it kind of makes you wonder how much of this type of writing is kind of really coming from her own experiences and views and kind of just times in life. And no, that's not to say she's like been with a pimp. She's a top girl, but kind of just these relationship strifes where she almost feels not like an object, but a vice or something that's only of use to a pimp, someone who really falls apart if his girls leave, because that's his business is humans. So I like this track. Don't interrupt the sorrow. That's a good title. Bitter. It's not maybe the right word here, but it's like a great cynically mature song about like the domestic home life. This is the fourth song on the album, and this is kind of where the album really kind of kicks into the gear about what it's really speaking on. Like it's an album about just like the domesticity of kind of women at home and kind of women who reach a point in their lives when it's just a home life for them, and it almost feels very empty because they grow up, they have dreams, they go to school, they have dreams to get a job, and then 10 years go by and they sit at home all the time while the man is out to work. There will be more on that in later songs, but to pair with these words in the song, the music is pretty mellow and understated. A lot of this album is, which I guess can be used as like for better or for worse in play for the album, is because I'll get to it later, but the album not my favorite, but it's, I mean, it's still fitting for the words. So on one hand, with this album, it's not my favorite album to listen to. I don't think it's one of her best, but it's not like really its own fault, because I think a lot of the music and how mellow, understated, and dreary it is, it's very fitting for, I guess, the words and the themes here. But there can be more I can say on how much it actually works as an album and what it's trying to say later. But I mean, but yeah, like given how tired the women in the song are and this situation and kind of these domestic lives, I think it fits. So, and I mean, there are some, I think there's a lot of uses of just more like violent and abrasive lines. It's still quite like toned down and kind of in its reflection and how sick she is of this relationship she's in, because it's that one song where it's just kind of bouncing back and forth between someone, but and it's also, I think, like a kind of a continuance of that last song, where it is like two characters, and it's kind of like how much of this is Mitchell truly writing as herself. But it has, I mean, it's a good story, but it has that one line. Where is that one line? I'm sorry. Yes, since I was 17, I've had no one over me. He says, "Anima rising, so what? Petrified wood process, tall timber down to rock." But I mean, yeah, it's kind of this a recurring theme, not just in this album, but of individuality over her music. So it's almost like in this song particularly, she's like speaking to a mirror. So it's a good track. What is the next one? The next one is Shadows of Scarlet Conquering. No, it's not a bad title either. It's probably the best track off this first side, almost solely for like the imagery that it creates. It's like a very filmic song, both kind of literally in how she's like celluloid rider, cinematic lovers. She's chasing the ghosts of Gable and Flynn. Bob Dylan mentions Clark Gable and Errol Flynn, but that's, I think he brings them up in like an '80s song, Brownsville Girl, and another song. So this was before that, but but yeah, no, the incredibly the imagery is kind of what works well here. I like this one bit. She's dressed in stolen clothes. She stands cast iron and frail. Just describing someone as cast iron and frail really paints a funny picture in your head. But with her impossibly gentle hands and her blood red fingernails, yeah, blood red fingernails. That's like it's kind of that same like understated, violent, and abrasive kind of feel to this whole album. Yeah, I think this came out around the time as Blood on the Tracks. Not quite as good, but it also goes on for 90 seconds after the I think final lyric, and I'm not gonna really call this album or the song musically inspired or ambitious, just because of how like dreary it is, and I do think it's more of like, I don't know, after hearing like an album like Kejira and Don Juan, something like this just comes off such like a test run, especially for what it's trying with a song like this and the way it decides to end. But the title track, we're here. The last line of the verse, blue pools in the squinting sun, hissing of the summer lawns. So yes, I'm right about the title of this album. It's about how hot it is in California. But I mean, I guess this I guess it's right that the title track, if you listen to the song, it basically explains the album and what it's supposed to be about. He gave her a diamond necklace for her throat. It's funny line because it's for her throat, which kind of sounds like she gets a leash for her throat, so she's kind of held back, staying in this house. Um, she's been put on a ranch and a barbed wire fence. Now, honestly, kind of just those lines, if you just take them, they don't sound too frightening or prison like, but here in the song, and coming with the songs before, it's really hitting it home. And there's also an interesting bit in the third verse. She goes like, "Diamond dog, carrying up and through double glass, looking at too much pride and too much shame." So, who who is the dog looking at? Is it just these characters or is it her? I think there is some like good self awareness and just criticism of her own self. And I don't really know much about this time with her. I don't like. Is she really? I don't think so. But is she really just locked up in a house with a man? But maybe this is just how she feels sometimes when she's in relationships. Because I like there genuinely is a lot of like feelings of like individualism as a creative in her music. I think that's a lot of what it comes off in her music, and these struggles to find like kind of true, long-lasting love and connection, and that struggle between like reaching a creative peak and reaching a fulfilling relationship. Um, but yeah, I mean, she talks about she has like a the song is about she has like a good life materially, but um, like in this domesticity, but she hates it anyway. She still wants to be that free man in Paris. Um, he gave her darkness to regret and good reason to quit, but she stays anyway, with the love of some kind. It's the lady's choice. There's a nice saxophone here. It's a pleasant sounding song despite the lyrics. It's a good song. The Boho Zone. This is a pretty good song too. Boho, it means bohemian. It's a piano song. There's jazz instruments. It sounds great. I do like this one. I don't know how much of a read I really have on it, or if the read I do have is even accurate. But again, I like when she tells these like stories of these characters, into which she can read into as purely fictional, or also can be a story about reading about herself, or is she talking about someone else in her life? I don't know, but in my eyes, this is kind of like a song about someone, a bohemian who is constantly in the presence of creatives, of artists, and kind of doesn't like look down on him, but constantly hangs out and looks below his like class. And he's not looking at envy, but more as like a pimp, like an artistic pimp. He finds that by hanging out with these people and these creatives, he can seem as a higher mark of like a tastemaker. He can feel his taste is more in line with creatives, because I mean he's not a creative, but he can be seen as like one of them because he kind of consumes so much of them. And these like low class artists are Jesus, and this man is basking in Jesus's wisdom, as she kind of talks about with Solomon, I believe, on these lyrics. And then that line about the priest gazing at pornography. This is the businessman looking at these artists, and he looks at it for profit, while she looks at, or she creatives in general, they look at art for art's sake, not like profit's sake. It's a good track. Oh, this one, the Harry's House, the centerpiece. The first word on this song is heat wave. The album title. It's about how fake like business people and like the upper middle class are. It's kind of similar to like the last song. That's a good line. The paper-minded wise, paper kids, paper walls to keep the gut reactions hid. Um, but yeah, this is just another song about mundane lives of capitalism. The first part of the song is good. Then it gets into the centerpiece part, which is a jazz standard by John Hendricks and like Harry Edison. She sings like a melody in the song. It goes like the what she sings kind of depicts like a housewife and kind of the life of the upper class, and kind of like depicts a house, and it ends with the melody ends with nothing really good without you, baby, you're my centerpiece. Better lyrics have been written. Thankfully, she didn't actually write those lyrics. I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's that great of a track here. I know what it's trying to do with kind of what she's with her like jazz influences, and she's kind of like trying to blend and into this jazz standard. I don't think it works very well. Maybe it's because more with what the song is actually talking about than how it actually sounds. But Sweet Bird, probably the best song of the album. I haven't highlighted. I feel like I haven't highlighted anything that major off this album in terms of like songs, but this one I think it's really incredible, and I highlight it because it's kind of like a true evolution from her songwriting on Blue. It's a return back to those kind of lost, monotonous feelings on that song River, like the high, and then the highs and traveling the world, of like coming back home on that I think Flight Tonight, and kind of like off other cuts on that album where she's like kind of talking about just being in like Africa and like Spain, and I mean there's this one line off this album. It like comes back to that with this one line off the album where she goes, I lay golden in time and woke up vanishing. I mean, that's kind of just traveling around, basically. um, the borderline mark of in between. I mean, give me some time. I'm losing mine. She's kind of saying it all for me. It's a relatable song. I feel like a lot of people have felt these kind of like these lost positions in life, these in between years where you don't know where you're going or what you're doing, but you're kind of just pushing through anyway. Lovely track, one of her best. The last track is this song Shadows and Light. She's kind of just singing on this one. It has an electric organ going. That's really it. The voice is a lot better than the organ. Don't love this track. I wish it was just the voice. I could be just like splitting hairs, with this, but I don't know. Some of the lyrics, it's not like corny, but I guess not. I guess it's a song you shouldn't take so literally, in how like it's so easy to be like, oh, critics of all expression, judges in black and white, saying it's right, saying it's wrong, saying it's right, compelled by pre-subscribed standards, or ideals we fight. Like, I don't know, it kind of seems like she's just mad and plighted by critics being cruel to her art. But I guess it's like in a better light, it's a song that can be like a self-aware piece, something vulnerable about kind of what it is to be human and our own struggles to be perfect, and about how we can never be what everyone else wants us to be. We can only what we want us to be, and sometimes what we want to be and sometimes what we are just isn't good enough for some people. So I think that's a better read of that song, but it almost adds up to like kind of my overall feelings on this album, and how it's just not the most pleasant album to listen to, or maybe the not most pleasant album to like talk about, because I was thinking about this. This is like her Michelangelo Antonioni album. Every movie that guy made is like about how mundane and hollow the lives of rich people and the upper middle class are, and it's just not that insightful after a while. It's like, and that's what it feels with the album. Once you get to the end, you're like, it kind of just breezes by you in kind of anything it's trying to say. Despite all this, I still give this a 4 out of 5, just because like it's like an album where it gets the 4 by just like reaching that bar of excellence and not going any higher. And it really is kind of lower on these like in comparison to the kind of rest of our albums. Even if like as a whole it's a bit more maybe cohesive than some of the other ones I've talked about, but I mean it could be more consistent, but it doesn't really have a lot of the high points. Like Ladies of the Canyon, it doesn't have a track as good as Willie or For Free. Clouds, it doesn't have a track as great as like Both Sides Now, Chelsea Morning, or The Gallery. And even if we go back to the cohesiveness and the how thematically sound it is, it's not quite what something like For the Roses is. It doesn't reach those heights and how coherent and thematic that is. Because For the Roses is like a true concept album, and this one, I guess it is, but it's just so like narrow, and not in the true sense of like how narrow. Now, For the Roses is like a narrow, focused album in what it's getting at because it's so tied to a personal relationship that she remarks on through the album, but the insights that are stemmed from this album, Hissing of Summer Lawns, it kind of just doesn't reach much of the peaks that something like For the Roses does. So on overall kind of standards, like it is a great album, but I certainly don't see, I think, like a lot of the hype in this one, because I think it is one of like your like most well-regarded albums. But yeah, I mean, it's a good album, but kind of compared to a lot of the other stuff, I don't think it reaches the highs. But again, it's still one of those gentleman 4 stars. So, thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.